Hi Brothersong, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to take you on a journey. I'm going to read the entirety of the Green Creek series by TJ Klune. I wanted to do it for a while, and you also voted on my community tab for this series, so that's what's going to happen. I'm feeling like the series is gonna be all I'm going to talk about in the next 6 months because I am obsessed. It's been really hard to drop the book yesterday because I was just so curious about what's gonna happen next. The writing style is very addicting, it's very fast-paced, and at the same time, I think TJ Klune develops the characters very well. I read up until 5 a.m. in the morning, and I'm not kidding, I'm not making this up. I read up until 5 a.m. and I had to wake up for work today. I was very exhausted, but I was still pretty pleased with myself. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know what's gonna happen. So this first book is about Ox, who was abandoned by his father at a very young age. He had to grow up very quickly and support his mom and himself. So he started fixing cars at a local garage with a bunch of older dudes who just accepted him as their own, especially a man named Gordo, who basically became his father figure and cared for him as if he's his own child. And that already gave me such a strong found family feel that I simply knew that I'm going to obsess over this book. Now Ox is growing up, we see him develop, and when he turns 16, he meets a boy named Joe that apparently moved with his family to a neighboring abandoned house. The boy is much younger, he's fascinated by him and he follows him around immediately like a puppy, and he makes it so Ox meets his family, who are very odd and touchy-feely, very not what Ox is used to. They tell him that they lived in this house for a long while but then had to move for a very mysterious reason. They tell Ox that what he's done with Joe is a miracle because he's been silent for quite a while after a traumatic event. Time passes and Ox becomes more and more integrated into the family. He's friends with the older children and he goes with them to school. They are very protective of him. Joe is his best friend. He's obsessed with Ox. He wants to know every single thought on Ox's mind. It's very innocent and childlike. There is nothing romantic to it yet. Although I was concerned about that age gap because it's a pretty big age gap. It's 5 or 6 years, I believe. When Ox becomes old enough, they tell him their secret. Apparently, they are a pack. They are a family of werewolves. And another more important secret that Joe is so obsessed with him and follows him around so much because while he's young, his wolf recognized Ox as his soulmate, and that at some point in the future, he would want to court him. This is all a problem for a later time, and Ox, for more part, is trying to find his place in that pack because he, unlike all the other members, is a human, not a werewolf. And the dynamic for most part is more difficult for him to understand. After the confession, he's introduced to the complexities of the pack dynamic, to the greater danger of other creatures, to the pack, and to a bit of the family history. I'm now at the point when Joe turned 17 and his feelings for Ox became more material. More romantic, and the awkward way they're trying to navigate because Ox is uncomfortable with the age gap. I don't know how much this conflict is going to play into this relationship because I feel like something is coming for the pack in general and I don't know what's gonna happen to them. There are many options, but I hope that it's not going to be a thing for a long while, and I genuinely want another jump in time because this book has a lot of jumps between ages. It's a bit muddled because they were best friends since they were children. So I have to read about the way they grew up, knowing that they're gonna eventually end up in a romantic relationship. TJ Klune could have definitely written it differently, like skipped more, for example, but it would have lost a lot of group dynamic development, and it's interesting. I'm not on board with the relationship yet, although it's very, very silly. Joe's wolf woke up, but he himself is still 17, and he's trying to court Ox in a wolf way by catching prey and leaving it on his doorstep. But in his human form, he's a 17-year-old with a very limited experience of romantic relationships. So it's definitely very funny. I love the pack. I love Joe's siblings. Carter is my favorite. Also, I really need a book about Gordo and his romantic relationship with a certain someone, because I feel like the drama there is so thick. It's also a relationship that started when they were younger, now they're separated, and I'm feeling like something really, really angsty happened. Anyway, I'm loving the book so far. I think this is gonna be a really, really fun reading vlog. It's after my workday, so I look a bit crunchy, but the light is going to disappear soon, so instead of eating, I'm going to tell you about the book. I'm really enjoying it. I think the plot itself is interesting and the romance just adds to it, or the other way around. The balance is really good. I love an angsty romance because it just hits differently, in my opinion. My prayers were heard, but not in a way I wanted, because they jumped in a very dramatic way, as in, spoilers here. If you have not read the book, I'm going to give you a timestamp. Spoilers, Joe goes after the corrupt Alpha to avenge himself and to avenge his family. I don't want to say that I didn't expect it, because I expected it a little bit, but I didn't want it to happen. It's pretty sad because Ox already has this complex from his father leaving him, so he has this childhood trauma that is reinvigorated because Joe went away, and we're now 3 years into it and Joe just came back, and Ox is not happy about it, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm very invested now because they're both adults and I can be okay with that. I don't know what's gonna happen with Gordo and Mark, because it feels to me that they also will have a similar issue. I hope, are gonna be different in a way, because I can't read the same plot over and over again with simply different characters. But I think they also have a bit of an age gap, and I know that Gordo became the witch of the pack at 12, so they were probably childhood friends as well. They definitely grew up together, but I hope you're not gonna have the same conversations in the second book, because it is exhausting. Anyway, they're both adults now. Joe again went through a very traumatic experience, and Ox as well. How they're going to be together now, I don't know, but Joe is concerning me because he seems very wild. I have about 60-ish pages left, and then I will jump into the second book, which I think is going to be about Gordo and Mark, and I'm excited. I think they're going to be my favorite couple. Well, they are my favorite couple so far. I don't know which other couples we're going to get. Like, I genuinely don't. I think maybe Robbie is going to be one part of one of the couples, because there are 4 books. He seems to be fitting, but whomst is going to be his mate? We just don't know yet. I finished reading Wolfsong and I'm obsessed with this book. I was a tiny bit disappointed by the ending because it was just very expected, or at least I personally expected to happen, so I wanted a little bit of something different. I immediately jumped into the sequel, which is Ravensong. It's about Gordo and Mark, and there are a few things already that were slightly unexpected. For some reason, I had not caught that Mark and Thomas are not actually blood brothers, that Mark was adopted into the family. And I also find it fascinating that not only we get the past, Gordo's and Mark's past, this whole growing up period seems to be important for the story, plus we get backstory, and for Gordo's and Mark's relationship, it's paramount because the drama happened in the past. But we're also getting the journey that Gordo, Joe, Carter, and Kelly went on in the first book that we didn't know much about, and it's pretty angsty. There seems to be some kind of a revision on the reason why Mark and Gordo split up. In the first book, the reason was Mark went away with his family and left Gordo behind. In the Ravensong, it's implied that Gordo is the one at fault and he made the decision. I am lost. And I gotta say that Gordo's story is at parts similar with Ox's story, and I don't appreciate it. I want something different. I hope it's gonna become different as they go. I am 20% in. I am not going to finish this book this night, for sure. But hopefully in a few days, we'll see. They're leaving. The pack is leaving Gordo behind. I'm so sad. Devastated, honestly. I knew it's coming, but I actually cried a little, which is embarrassing, but I did. My video is rendering and I'm reading a little bit, and it was definitely a hit to the system. Just sad. It's sad all around. I was filming a different video, hence the makeup, but I just had to update you on Ravensong because they held hands. I never thought I'm gonna be so emotional about hand holding because whatever, it's just hand holding. But the emotional build up to this hand holding was so good, and I am strictly on Gordo's side here because they're trying to gaslight him so much, and I am just waiting for them to take accountability for what they've done. It's a lot of, well, they've made us do this, and he made me do this, and I had to do this. And it's not accounting for Gordo's suffering this whole time. We'll see how it's going to play out, but I just have to say that I'm on Gordo's side. Now at this point I have 100 pages left in the book. I think I'm going to read it today before I go to sleep and then start the third book. I've heard that the third and the fourth book are not as good, but we'll see. I genuinely am curious about Carter now because his maid situation is odd. It's really odd. It's with the 𝕊𝕆ℙ𝕀𝔸𝕃, and this 𝕊𝕆ℙ𝕀𝔸𝕃 is in the wolf form. He doesn't shift back. They have not really seen each other as humans. So very, very curious about this whole thing. The concept is interesting.
Get used to disappointment. Hey.
The Kelly Robbie thing, I never understood. It seems so random and convenient. Robbie was obsessed with dogs for such a long time and then just decided that he likes Kelly now for no reason. I mean, there's going to be a reason. The reason is going to be the soulmate reason, but also I'm just not vibing with it. So I'm going to be interested in the Carter storyline, but the Kelly storyline, Kelly in general is not the most interesting character to me personally. Tell me in the comments down below who are your favorite characters from the series and how you would arrange the books personally from the worst to the best, because I'm curious. I do want to know. I finished reading Ravensong and the ending is bomb.com. It made me so interested in the third book. I already started it, but I don't have any opinions yet. It's Robbie's and Kelly's book, and you know that I'm the least excited for them. The ending of the second book, the Ravensong, made me so excited for Carter and the feral wolf, because we now know who the feral wolf is. And It's so twisty and fun.
Get used to disappointment. Hey.
Like, I'm really excited about it. What I have to say about the second book in general is I do not appreciate the consistent gaslighting of Gordo, which continued on. Just take responsibility for your actions. You literally left an underaged child on his own. It was really odd that till the very end, it was Gordo's responsibility to forgive them without them asking for forgiveness. The last few chapters were very dynamic, and the stakes were pretty high. I didn't expect some things to happen. But it's also overall a setup book for the next two books, so it had a lull in the middle. And I think I took more time to read this one. The start was very interesting for me, the end was very interesting for me, and the middle was a bit long. I'm very open to loving Robbie and Kelly as a couple, but I don't know yet. So far, my expectations are very low for them because I just don't get them as a dynamic. I do hope that TJ Klune changes my mind though. And overall, I'm ready to read the third book simply for Carter and Feral Wolf that I'm sure I'm going to get sprinkles of throughout. It's getting dark, so I'm going to make this update as succinct as possible. Don't mind the mess, I need to clean up my apartment. The thing that I didn't expect happened. I'm loving this book and I'm reading it so quickly. The second book I struggled with in the middle because it dragged a little, and this one is changing my mind. It's changing my mind on the romance as well. I didn't expect to be in any way attached to Robbie and Kelly because I just didn't see the romance in the first two books. I didn't understand why they were supposed to get together. It didn't seem like a romantic relationship, like they had chemistry. It seemed convenient for them to get together. So now I'm shooketh because I'm very much into it, and I think the plot is such a vibe, and it's kind of mind-boggling because this is an amnesia romance, and I usually don't like amnesia romances. I love amnesia trope in other genres, like suspenseful genres, crime, etc. And I think I'm reading this book so fast because it has elements of suspense. The first 15-20% of the book are written in a way that make it very hard to figure out the timeline. It's hard to figure out if it's Robbie's past or if it's his present or if it's his future. I was sure that it's the past, and it turned out to be the future. I think it was such a fun choice for the couple as well. I also am weirdly enjoying the romance, especially considering that I didn't see the two as an option really. I thought that the amnesia element is going to annoy me because we are not actually shown how the relationship between Robbie and Kelly developed. So it's hard to miss them as a couple, miss their past because we don't know their past. But I actually think that it makes the whole book more dynamic. The fact that we don't see what happened and they just tell us what happened. Also, somehow the relationship in the now, the present, where Robbie doesn't remember anything, is so goddamn angsty and delicious, and I'm very much into it. I think it's an unpopular opinion. I think people love the first books more than the last ones in the series, but this just hits all the notes. It's very much a thing that I enjoy. The mindfuckery of it all, the suspense, the dark tone of it, but also at the same time the angsty, will they, won't they, unresolved romantic tension between the couple. It's hitting where it has to hit, and I will probably finish reading this book very quickly. I have 50% left and it's been 2 days. I don't read this quickly usually. I'm still in bed and trying to do my reading
before getting up because I had some things to do today, and it's so funny. I think people forget to mention how funny the books are when they recommend it. They say it's dark, it's gritty, it's about this werewolves, but the tone is pretty serious and angsty, and it's pretty violent. But they never say how funny the dialogue is, how heartwarming the relationship is between all the pack members. So there is going to be a bit of a spoiler. I can't keep this whole thing completely spoiler free. As we know already, Robbie lost his memory because he was stolen and he's been a different pack. And Gorge's dad, as the big villain of this book and the series in general, decided to use Robbie against his own pack. So Robbie doesn't remember how he joined the pack, how he met Kelly, how their relationship developed, that they are mates, and they're working on it throughout this book. It's very heartwarming. It's really, really cute. But also when Gordo finally ran off and came back to his real pack, there was a clash between the pack and Gordo's dad, and Gordo took Kelly's wolf away from him, which is such an interesting plot point. I really enjoyed it. I think TJ Klune really has done a lot to enrich this particular sequel, to make it more interesting, considering that I was not interested in Kelly and Robbie at all prior to that. So Kelly is now a human, which is such an interesting dynamic because they're both trying to find their way to how they were. We get a lot of scenes between Robbie and other members of the pack where he's trying to figure out what happened in the past, what his relationship was with this people, but also Kelly is trying to find ways to exist as a human. And I'm just reading the chapters where Kelly caught a cold and they're all freaking out. Well, most of them, because wolves don't get colds, they don't get sick. And the majority of them are thinking that Kelly is going to die because it's some kind of a deadly disease, but it's just a cold. And it's so funny. The dialogue is incredible. I think also Robbie's going to take care of him, which is one of my favorite tropes.
Hi guys, I'm currently visiting my aunt in the Republic of Moldova, hence the changing background. And you might hear the sickness in my voice. I've been sick for about a week. I hope it's not going to come back because it's really annoying. It's really hot here, and being sick and hot at the same time is like the worst duo. It's like really, really bad. I did a lot of reading though because I couldn't really look at screens as in watch TV shows, so instead I read a lot. I don't know why that's different for me, but it's different. And I finished Heartsong, which surprisingly I gave 5 stars to. It's truly not something that we all expected, because I thought the first 2 books are the best books. It's usually this way in series, and the last 2 are going to be less interesting, especially considering that I wasn't particularly interested in the 2 other brothers that much. Concerning the 3rd book, I will say that it was a little bit different. The first 2 books are quite the same if you really think about it. The foundational parts are the same. I think what made the 3rd book stand out more is the different structure and the different conflict. The first 2 books are definitely very, very similar. If you think about it, the foundational parts are similar. There's a trend in general with all these books, the absent parents, the childhood trauma, the found family element. It's all the same in these books. It's what ties the books together as a series. But someone is banging over something so loudly out there. I just can't do anything about it. We'll just deal with it. Either way, as I was saying, the 3rd book is
slightly different because we're dealing with amnesia. And the first two books were second chance romances. I guess the third book is a second chance romance as well because Robbie loses his memory, but it still somehow feels fresher. I think the amnesia part contributed to it because there were elements of suspense in the book, and I love suspense, you know me. But also the relationship is slightly different. The way they discovered that they are each other's soulmates. And I think with soulmates, it gets really old very quickly because it's not a justifiable reason for me to be together. As a person that lives in a world that doesn't have soulmates, I have to see that these people are compatible, not just soulmates because someone else said so or because it's the way the world works or something of the sort. So seeing how the relationship between Robbie and Kelly developed was more interesting for me. And I think it also felt different because the third book is less sexual because Kelly is asexual. Now, Kelly and Robbie do have sex in this book, but it's at the end and it's fade to black, which compared to the first two books, I think indicates it was a deliberate choice. And I found it very interesting because it was, in my opinion, intentional. I wasn't wrong when I said I'm expecting the feral wolf / Carter to have more screen time, page time in Heartsong. They definitely had some page time, and the part that I really enjoyed was the feral wolf reveal. I think it was very fun. His name is Gavin, and we see him as a human for the first time at the end of the third book. The fourth book follows him and Carter, and I thought I'm gonna be so obsessed with them. And I gotta say, I liked Kelly and Robbie more. There's a lot of adventuring in this book and a lot of trying to find Gavin for reasons that I'm not going to really delve into. There's a lot of angst that is kind of unwarranted in my opinion. I understood the angst between Robbie and Kelly because while we were not exposed to their relationship prior to amnesia, only post amnesia, I at least could understand that they've had something. In the case of Carter and Gavin spent most of his time with Carter in the pack as a wolf. So they don't really have any human-to-human memories. And I highly doubt that you can fall in love with a wolf unless you are fury inclined or something along those lines. So I don't understand it yet, but I'm at the moment where they have to spend a lot of time in the cabin alone and they have to share a living space. And I think I'm going to catch the feels now, but I just don't know yet. Either way, the series overall is giving me such Teen Wolf nostalgia feels, and I'm kind of thinking of rewatching the show again.
This is the end of the journey. I finally finished reading the whole series, and incidentally, the fourth book, Brothersong, is the one that I struggled with the most because it was genuinely hard to read. A lot of it felt like filler, like one of those episodes in large anime TV shows where characters do anything but something helpful for the plot. I do not understand why that happened because TJ Klune had a really good grasp on the plot in the first three books. This feels really long and also very pointless in many chapters. At least 40% of this book could be cut and nothing will change, which makes it a very annoying book to read. I love reading about my favorite characters, don't get me wrong. In fan fiction, I'm happy with fluffy, useless chapters. But in this case specifically, it just felt like he didn't know what he wants to do with the characters. And there are a few things specifically that I want to mention. Carter / Gavin, the feral omega wolf, was such an interesting concept for me, and I think you've noticed how much I mentioned it throughout this video. I have not edited this video yet, but you could probably make a drinking game out of it. With all the build-up excitement, I was pretty let down with the way the relationship developed in Brothersong. TJ Klune spent so much time on background characters and their romantic relationships that he had no time left for Carter and Gavin. Maybe the problem was he really didn't know what to do with them. The romantic episodes that they have, the scenes, the very minimal scenes that they share are cute, but it's not enough for me to believe in their romance. Their whole relationship dynamic feels like two straight dudes that are stuck in the same room together that can't get out and have to be in a relationship with each other for some reason. It doesn't feel like their relationship actually naturally developed. So it is very odd, and even by the end of the story, they don't become much more believable to me. In general, if you look at this book from far away, it seems like it's not Gavin's and Carter's story, it seems like it's Carter's story. Like the first 40% is just him figuring out his relationship with his brothers, which I gotta say is pretty boring. Like, it could have been interesting, but it just takes so much space, and it's the last book. I want to see the romance that I was promised, first and foremost, and then see the plot finally reach its completion. The only book in the series that felt more like the character's book rather than the couple's book is the first one, but it didn't feel like a waste of page time because we weren't familiar with the world of the werewolves and we were seeing it from Ox's point of view from the first time, so the plot in general was very engaging. In the fourth book, we just wait for things to happen, and it's not fun. The second thing that TJ Klune does a lot in Brothersong is repetition. He employs this writing tool a lot in other books in the series as well, but in Brothersong it stings more because he repeats things that are not important to the plot. How many times do you think a joke about Carter not knowing what to do with a dick is funny? I think just twice. How many times we get this joke throughout Brothersong, do you think? So many that once again you can make a drinking game out of it, and it very quickly becomes annoying. There are quite a few other instances where minor things are repeated over and over again in this book, and that becomes very old very fast. The third thing that happens in this book that is equally as important is how many times TJ Klune breaks his own rules. We know that writing craft technique at this point is just a classic. When the author continuously builds the rules of their fantasy world and then in the pivotal moment they break it, which is a very cool technique and it works every single time unless you do it too many times, unless all the rules that you've built are no longer important because you've broken all of them. Then it no longer brings out the reaction that the author wants from the reader. And that is very instant in Brothersong. First of all, we broke one very significant rule in Wolfsong, which is making Ox, who is a human, capable of being an alpha without churning. Then, in the third book, somewhere at the end, we break another rule. We make a magic user capable of becoming a werewolf, which was also a big no-no. Interesting twists considering that we have not had a rule-breaking moment in quite a bit. Then in the fourth book, we truly lost all discipline and run with it. I think there were at least 3 rules broken throughout Brothersong. The first one is innocent, but also at the same time is still a rule. 2 members of the pack become mates not by cool, but because they want to. They become platonic mates. And it's completely opposite of what TJ Klune was saying about being mates throughout the first 3 books. You could not follow the call, you could deny becoming a mate, but you can't really force it. You can't really choose to be someone's mate if you don't have this inkling. That seemed very forced to me, very convenient, like in those instances where the author wants everyone to be paired up by the end of the story. I remember there was another minor thing about the magic that I had not written down. I am sorry, I'm not a reliable narrator, apparently. But I think there was one. And there is a really major one at the end that at this point is kind of annoying. Now, I'm not going to spoil it. If you've read the book, you know what happened. There have to be stakes in fantasy books. And there are some stakes here, and I don't mind them necessarily. It's just the solution felt very sudden and made up. Like TJ Klune needed something and he just pulled it out of thin air just because it was necessary, not because he built up to it. So this book definitely felt like the weakest one out of the 4. At the end of the day, I think this book could have been much better, much better. And it's the only book out of the series that feels like a fantasy and not a romance. So this was my journey with the Green Creek series. If you read it, tell me in the comments down below which books you read in the series, if you maybe even finished the series, and which couples, characters, twists of the plot are your favorite. My personal rating would probably go like this. The first book is the best book. It's the most exciting one. We get a very interesting dynamic. It's just a really cool book. The 3rd book is my favorite book because it has elements of suspense and because it was in many ways unexpected. The couple that is my favorite is Gordo Mark, but Kelly and Robbie are definitely up there. The 4th book is my least favorite. So this is my personal rating. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this journey. I hope you're having a good day out there, and I will see you soon with another video, but until then,